The subject of today's episode is on the nature of desire. Desire is the second in the Four Noble Truths. That is, it is the cause of suffering. Whenever we have suffering, the cause is this, desire. But we have to know not only the word, we have to search for what the real thing is. I talked a bit in a couple of previous videos about the extent to which we are literally a slave of desire throughout our whole lives. Why is this? Why aren't we able to change or to control our cravings, desires, longings, wishes? Why aren't we able to be free from this slave master? That's because we are totally ignorant of the nature of desire and of how it is formed. We know essentially nothing about the real thing. We know about the idea of it, we can understand the theory of it, but when it comes to the real thing, the desire as it exists in our mind, in reality, we know nothing. We see nothing. And it's because of being ignorant of it, because of not knowing, that we are a slave to it all the time, without even realizing. The nature of desire, the nature of tanha it's called in Pali, it is totally automatic, and it is born of causes and conditions. It's part of a chain of causes and conditions that are all leading to one another and that are all kind of inseparable from one another in a way. In the same way that if you open an old kind of watch, one that's not run by a battery but that's run by mechanics, how all the little gears inside push each other to keep going around. It's like this. It's part of this chain of conditions dependent on one another that if one of them stops, all the others will stop as well. And I'm going to explain a little bit more, open up what are these different gears and what is the role that desire plays in the chain of causes and conditions. First, there are two kinds of desire, mainly. There is desire to keep and get more of what is agreeable, and there is desire to get rid of what is disagreeable. So in order for desire to exist, we need to have these two things, agreeable and disagreeable. Something that is felt or known as being agreeable is automatically desired. Desire to keep it, desire to have it, desire to have more. And in the same way, whatever is known as disagreeable, you desire to get away from it. So this is the condition upon which desire depends, having agreeable and disagreeable. And whatever is agreeable and disagreeable, we get hold of it, the mind gets hold of it by way of contact with the six sense doors. That is, contact with agreeable and disagreeable sights, things that we see, things that are heard, things that are smelled, tasted, physically sensed on the body, and also ideas that are born in the mind. Whenever there is contact, there is this evaluation of agreeable or disagreeable at some level. And wherever there is contact, there is desire. Desire for what is agreeable and desire to get rid of what is disagreeable. It's not something that we choose or that we control. And we think it is us. We think I desire this, I desire that. But really in reality, we don't choose it. We're not in control of it. And it functions without our knowledge. All this happens in our mind without us seeing it at all. Let's say, for example, we are in a room and there's a piece of tasty food on the table. As soon as we see the tasty food, we will want to automatically reach out to pick it up to eat it. Or as soon as there is an itchy sensation on the body, automatically reaching to scratch it. Without knowing what gave rise to this intention in our mind, without being able to see what happened in our mind at the moment that it got hold of the agreeable sight or the disagreeable sensation. Or a third example, let's say we have contact through the ears, somebody talking about the best movie they ever saw that everybody should see once in their life. This is contact with an agreeable idea by way of the sound, which gives rise to immediately the desire, I want to watch that movie. Then from there, calculation of, how can I get the thing I want? Maybe I will ask him where he saw the movie. Was it on Netflix? Did you go to the cinema? Or do you have a copy you can lend me? Again, all without seeing any of these steps that happened in our mind. It's so fast. It's like in the space of a split second, all this goes on in our mind without us knowing. And as long as we don't see this, then because it is automatic, we continue to follow it. We continue automatically to be a slave, to be led by this desire whenever it arises. How can we stop to be a slave of it? What most people end up doing, the only solution that people are able to find, is to basically repress or restrain the physical action that follows from the desire. So for example, you see the tasty chocolate, yes, the desire is born, you want to eat it, but no, I don't go and physically eat the chocolate. And people do this all the time in normal life for many different reasons without necessarily practicing Dhamma, either just because they want to lose weight or because they're in a friend's house and they want to be polite and not look greedy. Or sometimes people will restrain themselves from committing cruel or immoral acts out of either fear of God or fear of police. But this kind of restraint is not enough to free ourselves from desire. It might be a little bit better than just being totally without restraint and indulging in whatever sensual pleasure or whatever desire arises. But it's not enough, because even if, let's say, chocolate, you have the desire to go eat chocolate, or you have the desire to scratch an itch and you decide not to scratch, but regardless of this, then still your mind is a slave of that desire, because it's still rolling in the same automatic way whenever it sees an agreeable or disagreeable sight, sound, smell, taste, etc. And all you have done was to restrain the physical action without being able to restrain how this desire was born in the mind, because it's totally automatic and you don't see it. So the only way we can actually get to see and understand the reality of desire, and thereby to begin to be free of it, is by developing sati, correct mindfulness, which means exactly that, to be aware, mindful of what happens in your mind when there is contact with the agreeable or disagreeable sight, or contact through any of the other 6 sense doors. To see what it actually is to get hold of the object in the mind and how it reacts. This is how what is otherwise totally invisible to us, that we never see, becomes visible. And the sati is a practice. The more you practice, the more clearly visible it becomes. Ajahn gave 2 examples about this. There is the example of the movement of the wings of a hummingbird, that if you just see a hummingbird in nature, whose wings are beating at up to 200 times per second, you will never ever get to see the movement of the wings as it flaps. You just see a blur. And it's only with the use of a camera or a video that is able to show you the film of it and then slow down the speed that we are able to see the individual wing beats. So the sati that we develop, the mindfulness of our own mind, is like the video camera that can slow down what's happening and show us from where the desire starts, how it forms, how it grows, how the intention is born from it, which we would normally just not see at all. A similar example is that in those cases when there are 2 people who finish very, very closely in a race, whether it's a running race or a swimming race or a bicycle race, if the 2 people finish so closely that everybody watching will just see that they finish at exactly the same moment, then you have to go to the video camera, and then the judges will see, let's say for example, one of the runners was bent slightly forward, therefore his head crossed the finish line a millisecond before the other one, which nobody would have seen if it were not for the video camera that was able to slow down what was happening. So this mindfulness, awareness of what is happening as it happens in our mind, is the key to correctly practice to not be a slave of desire. Because as long as we can't see it, then it's like as if there is a criminal who is constantly coming into the shop and nobody ever sees him because he comes at night and he manages to find a way that he breaks in, and they're like, but how does he get in? We don't know, because nobody is there to see him. That's why people put up CCTV cameras, to be able to catch the criminal, to see, okay, he came in this way and he looked like that. Otherwise, there is no way to catch him. So why are we a slave to desire? Why can't we control our desires? It's because we are ignorant of the nature of desire and how it's formed. we don't see it, we can't see it in the same way as that with the naked eye, we can't see the individual beats of the wing of a hummingbird, or we can't see who has won the race when two people arrive at the finish line at seemingly the exact same time. And it's not enough to simply restrain the physical action that the desire gives rise to, because our mind is still ruled by the desire as long as we are ignorant of how it is born. So that's why it's only by developing sati that we can start to be free of it. The sati that is like the video camera that slows down what's happening with the hummingbird's wings or with the two people who finish the race. It's like the CCTV camera without which any criminal will enter the shop unseen and unknown.